All right, welcome everyone. Thankfully, I want the first thing checked off the list. I've actually hit record on these sessions, so you're able to go back and watch this YouTube channels anytime you want after today. I want to take 30 seconds to just welcome everyone and get out of the way so Christine can speak. I'm Father Bryce. If you're not aware, welcome to our first session of Graceful Parenting. Very excited to have Christine Donovan with us, certified parenting coach. And as I said in the video last week, many other things as well. But we are ecstatic to have this first session on her paradigm of left, lift, and listen, focusing on left today. Christine, welcome.
Thank you very much. And I am so excited. I was at the 9 o'clock service, 5 baptisms. That is great. I love that. Welcoming more children in. And after a couple of years of so much isolation, as parents, we need community. So the program that Father Bryce has and other people have put together for the year, stick with it. You're only meeting once a month here, but I hope you'll make connections and share this information and brainstorm with each other at other times. So how many people were able to see the video? Okay, most people. Real quickly, for the few that didn't, let's review, let, lift, and listen. Who remembers what let means? Let the natural consequences be the teaching, not the punishment, the natural consequences. Now, as a very sweet young woman who came up to me a few minutes ago said, should we let our children use social media? I love that. And we'll talk about it. So that's letting the consequences be the teaching. The second one is lift. And what does lift mean? Lift them up, right? We lift them up, we reach deep inside and we recognize what is true and good and right and how they were uniquely created with certain strengths. And it doesn't mean we tell every child they're perfect, every child they're smart. It means we look for what is really true inside of them and we pull that out. We recognize, we see it. And the third one, let, live, and listen, right? And so when we start talking about listening, it's not only listening with our ears, but with our eyes, our hearts. We're listening to their emotions, their actions. We're really, and we'll talk about the tools of listening, as well as the tools of communication. How do we communicate so that our children will listen to us? So those are the 3 parts. Now there's a 4th L. It's love. Everything we do, everything that we do with our children is in the context, in the atmosphere of love and compassion. Anger really doesn't have a very good effect on our children. We're going to feel it. And what we're going to try to do is enter everything with love. Everything we do with love. So today, as Father Bryce said, we're going to focus on the let part of it. Before we consider what that means, Lord, I thank you for this group of parents. Lord, I thank you that you gifted us with the children who have entrusted and loaned to us. And you chose each one of these parents specifically to be the one to guide their children in your ways, using your ways and your help. So we thank you for that, Lord, and I ask them for the next 30 minutes that you use me as a vessel. I am certainly not a perfect parent, and many parents, and yet you speak through even the least of us. And so I ask that you use me to speak words, and if they're your words, not for a specific person in this room, that those words would just penetrate their hearts. And we pray against the enemy, that we know that the enemy brings shame and guilt, Lord. So if anyone in this room starts feeling shame and guilt, Lord, I just pray in your name that you would remove that with that power. You would empower us with your love and your grace and your wisdom. In the precious name of Jesus Christ. Okay, so imagine yourself in your car and you are being a great parent today. You have packed up a cooler, you're taking your kids to the beach. It's gonna be a wonderful family day. You have nice healthy snacks, 2 extra goodies. You're in the car, you're riding, say you're going to the Isle of Palms, you're crossing the connector, and you know, a fighting in the back seat, right? Got 2 kids back there, and they start going. What do? I can tell you what I usually do. Stop it, stop it, stop it right now. If I have to turn the car around, I will. I need it. Stop it. And I'm turning around, maybe trying to grab whatever they're fighting. I swerve. Now, see what you made me do? Stop it. I'm telling you. And my voice gets louder and louder. By the time we get to the beach, I'm furious. My kids have ruined my well-planned out day to be a good mom. They're either crying or sulking because I've yelled at them, I've threatened them, and not a good way to start the day. So let's look what letting the consequences do the teaching might look like here. So driving along, kids in the back seat, start bickering, fighting. I simply lift my foot off of the accelerator, start slowing down. I don't come to a stop, I need to be safe, but I'm going slow enough that the car will start backing up behind me. What do my kids do? Mom, what are you doing? You're going so slow, Mom, your cars are backing up. I said, oh, I know, I'm so sorry, I can't concentrate when I was fighting in the back seat. I drive slowly in this time. Going slowly. Pretty soon it gets quiet. It doesn't. Mom, come on, we're not fighting anymore. Let's go, let's go. Okay. You get to the beach, right? And now we have a consequence to you. Anytime we're driving any place, we have to be safe. You're not gonna go 20 miles an hour on I-26. Some parents, you might even just pull off and stop. I can't drive in those fighting, no problem. I brought a little book along, I'm gonna read. And when you guys are ready to go, and I can drive safely, we'll go. Isn't that fun? Yeah, it really works. So that's just one example. And isn't that the way that the real world works, right? It's logical consequences. Hopefully we're not running our lives trying not to get punished, right? We're doing what works well for us. Logical consequences. The other thing that this is doing is maintaining the relationship with our children. When we're kind and compassionate, we're not punishing, we're letting logical consequences teach. We have a better relationship. And when your children are really little, like this one back here, you totally control everything that your child does, right? The older they get, the less control we have. What we want is influence. That's all we have. And the way to have influence is to have a good relationship. So again, this is one of the reasons we are going to approach all conflict, any kind of challenge with love and empathy. So let me give you another example. Well, first of all, something else I said in the video, if you didn't see it, is that these concepts, let, lift, and listen, they're not arresting, and they're not some new way of parenting. As King Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. What let, lift, and listen is a framework or a foundation. And this foundation, after years and years of study, experience, prayer, I found that these three items were found everywhere. They're all through the Bible. The way that God, if we look at God as a perfect parent, perfect father, all of the examples of Bible follow these. The experts, research. If you read any parenting book, there's Father Bryce loaned me a couple. I've got all sorts of parenting books. If you look at these, they focus on 1, 2, or 3 of these. That will for this. So this is nothing new. It's just an easy way to remember, and it's a foundation. So let's look at one of the examples from the Bible. And one of my favorite stories is prodigal son. So if you think back to that, the father allowed his son to take his inheritance and leave. Okay, this is not what the father had raised him to do. It's not what was good for the son. But the son was old enough that he could do this, and he told his dad this is what he's going to do. And his dad let him do it. He let him go. And what happened? Some logical consequences followed, right? The son soon found himself eating with the pigs. It was the worst of the worst. And what happened then? The son went home to the father. And with the father stand and say, I told you not to go. You didn't learn your lesson. There were no lectures. There was no anger. The son had learned from the consequences. What did the dad do? He welcomed him with open arms. He loved him and kept that relationship. So, and we don't know what happened in the rest of the story, but I would imagine that the older son, who had his own lessons to learn, right, and he didn't become himself and get consequences there. Probably that older son still had, I mean, the younger son, the older son still had his inheritance. The other son probably wasn't going to get more inheritance. He may have had a more difficult life because he'd spent all his inheritance, and that's okay. One part of letting the consequences do the teaching is that we do not rescue our kids from their pain. And when I was listening, I was in the 9 o'clock service, and I was listening to the very Reverend Wright, and in his very short homily, who heard it? Who's for most of you there? His very short homily, he pretty much gave what I'm taking half an hour to say, right? Because what he said is that victory comes through suffering. Victory comes through suffering. It's the way of the cross. He also said that the message, meaning is in everything, and the message comes through the suffering. He never said anything, and I don't think his parents, that the message comes through lecturing, through yelling, and through punishing. It comes through the experience. So that is what letting the consequences do the teaching does. So connecting logical consequences to behavior is also defined as discipline. And the root word of discipline is disciples, or disciples, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it means teaching, learning, student. And what did Jesus call his followers? Disciples. He taught them, he led them, and that's what we're to do as parents. And will not be as perfect as God. The one thing that a lot of researchers have found is that a child's first relationship with God is usually a reflection of the relationship with their own parents. Primarily the father, but still both parents. That is what they transfer that relationship. And probably all of us in this room did that. And many of us still are challenged by that, and hopefully we're continuing to grow. If our parents were punishing and angry and mean, we might have turned to God expecting him to be the same way. And it takes growth and time to learn that he's not that way. He's gracious. He always wants. So what we can do as parents, to the best of our ability, is try to model who God is, because that's our first child, our child's first impression of who God is. Another reason for letting the consequences do the teaching and approaching everything with love is that when we're loving and not angry, our children don't have a place to focus their energy except on themselves. If I'm yelling at my child and punishing them, it's way easier for them to turn their finger at me and their emotions and their energy, being mad at mom. When I'm just standing by and kind and loving, they have to look at themselves. Or they have a better opportunity to look at themselves. So in the story I told in the recording about a parent, this is dealing with a toddler that was throwing a tantrum, and I gave what punishment looked like and what a logical consequence looked like. And a parent that listened to that came back to me and said, well, wait a minute. In both cases, the child was put in timeout. So real briefly, if you didn't hear it, but in the first case, the child was throwing a tantrum, the family was allowed to sit down for dinner. And the parent walked over and said, stop that right now, you're throwing a tantrum, that makes you really mad. Go to your room, I'm gonna carry you to your room, I'm gonna shut the door, and you're gonna sit in there by yourself and learn a lesson. Setting the timer and walking away. Okay, that is a punishment. Why is that a punishment? The parent is angry, right? The parent is angry. The second way looks like this. Oh no, looks like you're having a tough time. No fun if you're around when you're like this. No problem. You can have a tantrum in the room. Now, the child's throwing a tantrum, not really hearing this, probably. As a parent, when we're saying that, it's changing our whole man for them. Okay, so we pick them up, we put them in the room and say, oh, we're gonna miss you while you're gone. Come out when you can play nice. So it's the same action, but one is a punishment and one is a logical consequence. Make sense? So let's see. Another example. Well, let's go back. Let's talk about embarrassment. Is embarrassment a good logical consequence when a child misbehaves?
Sometimes that's the natural consequence.
Sometimes it is. If I do something really stupid or awful in front of other people, what's the consequence for me as an adult? I'm a little embarrassed. Now, we're not ever trying to embarrass our children. Absolutely, we don't try to embarrass our children. But sometimes embarrassment is okay. And we might say, okay, well, maybe I'll do that for my kid, but I don't want to be embarrassed by my child, right? Well, go back to the coming across the connector. Now, you might be feeling like you're embarrassed because you're holding up traffic, right? If you want to hold up traffic. Well, if you really think about it, the people behind you are going to get to the beach maybe 30 seconds later, not really going to change their lives. Are you going to focus more on those strangers that you'll never see again, or the two children in your backseat? So sometimes we have to be a little bit embarrassed as we do for parents, and that's okay. In fact, if you're really lucky, when you get to that stoplight on Isle Homes, the car behind you might pull up next to you and be giving you nasty looks, maybe even give you some finger signals, right? And what are your kids in the backseat doing? They are shrinking down. They are embarrassed, right? And what do? Because inside yourself, you're saying, oh, thank you, you're helping me do everything. Right? So much more fun. So here's an example of a child who was embarrassed and mom who might be embarrassed. Little Joshua was pretty good about doing his homework, but he was really bad about remembering homework. So he would get to school and then he would be able to go to the office and call his mom to come and bring in this homework that he left behind. Well, the mom started understanding this let them listen and decided, wait, this isn't good. I have a better idea. So Josh called one day, bring the homework, and mom said, I'm so sorry, I'm too busy today. And when Joshua came home from school that day, he was angry. He was upset. He said, Mom, I can't believe you didn't bring my homework. I did it last night. You know, I was in this recess. The teacher making this recess to say to do homework I'd already done again. And Mom said, no, you love recess. And you had done all that homework. And, well, Mom, you are so mean. You are so mean. You could have brought it in. Well, it might seem like I was busy. I'm sorry. You didn't get recess today. Why don't we go to the park so you can run around? What do you think of that? Should your child be rewarded by going to the park because they can do their homework? It's not what you're doing, right? In this case, you love your teacher, you love the child's teacher, because when someone else puts in the consequence, you can just come along the side of your child and be their friend, right? And really, your child does need to get out and play. Now, your child also might need some help. So you would recognize when our child really is having trouble remembering. We don't just let a child work with the consequences if they need guidance. So that night when the child does his homework, maybe mom says, well, you know what, Joshua, before I go out in the morning, so I don't forget anything, I always pack my bag when I leave. Would you like me to help you put your homework in the bag and put it in the door? So she's helping, right? If he says, no, I'll do it later, what does she say? Okay. And might have a replay, right? And that's okay. Now, in this case, the parent might also be embarrassed because you want the teacher to know that you're a good parent and making your child do your homework. Once again, you care what the teacher thinks about you more than you care about raising your child. So another thing that came to me in thinking about this is the power of the pause. Sometimes in the moment, we want to ground our child from life, right? Or we want to take their toy and smash it. Or, who knows, we want to yell, or we do yell, right? And the beauty of approaching everything with love and remembering the power of the pause. Our kids aren't dogs, right? They don't have to know immediately what they did wrong. We can go to our child and say, oh, this is so sad. I'm really not ready to talk about it right now. I'll get back to them later. Don't worry about it. How's that? And now you have a chance to think, to talk to your partner, to call a friend, really think through what it is that you want to do, what is a logical consequence. So let's practice on one. Let's imagine you have a child that is wanting to juggle. Okay, so they have some beanbags, ball or something. They're juggling in the house, and you say, please don't do that in the house, do that outside, and I break something. And the child will go over. You go in the other room, and suddenly you hear a crash. And a lamp has fallen over and broken because it got hit by a ball. All right, what would a logical consequence be? Well, what would logical consequence? What does it look like when the parent, when you come running back from the room and the lamp is broken on the floor and you just told your child not to throw the ball in the house? What's a normal reaction? I told you so. I'm angry. Right? Oh, you lose it, right? And that's understandable. Yeah, it's that. Is that what God does when we look at that up? Does he come in with his arms raised up, start screaming at us? Kind of ways, right? So, what's a different way of that look like when we come into the room and see the broken lamp? What? Well, one thing a parent might do is walk in and say, oh no. Oh, this is bad. This is awful. You want to try to clean it up yourself, or would you like me to help? Probably want to help because it's glass every place, right? So you're helping the child clean up. You're breathing deep inside, remembering love. That's what teaching. You're cleaning up, trying to keep the child is looking at you like, what is wrong? Right? He was expecting to be big brother. So clean up, and you're thinking, okay, at that point, you might not be able to think of logical consequence. You might say, hey, I'm kind of busy, we'll figure out what we're going to do about this later, don't worry about it. Okay. Now, you have some time. What's someone throw out a good logical consequence? Right, they have to replace the lamp, they have to pay for the lamp out of their own birthday money. So, parent comes back and says, okay, we need to replace that lamp, and so it was about $50. I don't want to give you $50, that's my money, I was saving for a new skateboard. I know you worked so hard for that money, and somehow hard you work for that money, I know it's hard. I remember I backed my car in the parking lot once, and instead of going on vacation, I had to get my car fixed. I know how you feel, so. Doesn't that make sense? But it's not what we do naturally unless we think about it. Naturally, what we do is, well, if you listen to me and you haven't thrown the ball in the house, you wouldn't have to pay for this. I hope you learned your lesson. What we've done there, immediately the child says, oh, good, I can focus mine and provide you. Instead, mom feels bad. Okay, so that's one consequence. Now, the thing about community and the thing about you all needing to be creative is that the same consequence doesn't work for every child. So say the child has a piggy bank full of money because he has very generous grandparents and he's got a lot of money. And so he says, oh, I'm $50 is that, no problem. So you know that consequence isn't going to work for that child. So what's another?
What if you had them, sort of do $50 worth of chores around the house?
$50 worth of chores around the house.
Yeah.
Good, and that would be a great consequence. And because that's taking their time, and their time is valuable, right? How would you connect that if they already have the money?
How, if they already have it?
Right, so why do I have to do chores? Because I broke a lamp, that doesn't, how can you connect that? And make it logical to them? Well, what is it going to take you to go get a lamp? Your time. So what might you say to your child? Might say, thanks for the $50. It's good that your grandparents were so generous. It's good at saving your money. I'm gonna have to take the time to go get this lamp, but that's no problem because you can be back in the house going on and have to get the car. See, very good. So a different consequence. We want it to happen. What if the child doesn't have any money?
Take them off.
Pardon?
If you take them all away, it doesn't.
Take the balls away, right? And how would you do that? What would you say?
Because you broke my thing and didn't listen to me after a month, you lose privilege of your boss.
Okay, that's good. That's a good start. What you're doing with that is because you did this to me. Okay, so try that again and let's focus on the ball. Go ahead.
They probably love baseball and go practice.
Okay.
Have to miss baseball practice.
Okay, good. That's kind of connected with what you were saying.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the taking the balls away. Why would you take the balls away? How would you do that? With compassion. Oh no. Looks like.
So you don't have your skill level yet, or it looks like you are being responsible.
Looks like what?
I can't trust, like, need to build the trust back.
Well, again, I can't trust is about me, and this isn't about me, okay? I think this, oh gosh, it looks like you're not quite ready to use these balls. So that's no problem, we'll just put them away. Again, this is no problem, because if it's a problem for me, it's not a problem for them. I made it my problem. If it's not a problem for me, it's a problem for them. So, yeah.
So you don't reinforce, this is what happened. These are the consequences of this action.
Okay, the question is, it's a good question, and I like what you did, because the answer is no, we don't enforce, and it's so. You're gonna get bloody cheeks on the inside. And why is it so the child, let's say the child has to pay for the paper, okay? And then we'll get set up, so we say, now, why don't we say, I hope you learned your lesson. If you had listened to me and not played with the ball, you would have this money. Why don't you say that? Right, it's back on me, getting the child to focus on me. Also, very subtly, we're telling our child they're not smart enough to learn the consequences. And all their lives, they're gonna need mom or dad to tell them what to do and why. Go ahead.
So one thing I tell my kids is that they can learn the easy way by watching or listening to someone else, or the hard way by doing it themselves and finding out it's a mistake. So in that case, what I've been kind of telling them wouldn't work. Because I would bounce back to, oh, you didn't learn the easy way. The easy way is to listen to what I told you. And you decided to learn the hard way. By breaking stuff.
Well, I think that's a really good teaching, a really good thing. Did you hear what she said? That she tells her kids that she would like them to learn the easy way, not the hard way. And this is a good teaching, not in the moment of a problem. And this is a really good way to teach as a parent, is to tell her own stories. So you think of a story about when you thought about doing something you kind of knew you shouldn't have done, that your mom told you not to, or your friend, or your boss, or whatever, and you say, and I just went ahead and did it my way, and oh my gosh, I wish I did this. And that's all we say, let the child have the balance. The child knows, because our kids aren't stupid. If we told them not to throw the ball in the house because they might break something, and they threw the ball in the house and they broke something, do we need to tell them why they shouldn't throw the ball in the house? They learned it. They totally learned it. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts about it? So another logical consequence for the same situation is the child that says, well, I don't have any money. I can't pay for that. What's our response to this? The first thing we respond with is love and compassion. Oh, that's right, we don't. Okay. What are you going to do about that? Well, I can't do anything about that. I'm not old enough to get a job. You want me to get a job, Mom? Well, no, you're right. You're not old enough to get a job. But you know what? There's some jobs around here that I would be happy to. I was going to take my car to the car wash. Maybe you'd like to do that. You can use that money to pay for part of it. Again, just compassion, understanding, and listening. That is a problem. I agree with you. Okay.
I've tried that, but my kids don't really have those work ethic. And they will fool around and play with the hose, and the car actually doesn't get washed.
Okay, that's all right. All right, good. So she said, they fool her kids don't have to work ethic. All right, so let's walk this a little bit more. So the child says, okay, I'll wash the car. I'm going over to play at John's house right now. I'll see you later, Mom. Should we tell the child, no, you didn't see my car now? You could, but then that's making us the boss again, right? The kids are fighting for control. You might say, okay, you have plans. When are you going to clean the car or the one? I'll do it tomorrow, Mom. Okay, that's awesome. Now I'm thinking, yeah, well, so tomorrow, child gets up and says, oh, I've going to the game with my baseball game with my friends. I guess you can go out and get the car. No problem. Once the car is free, you can go. Oh, Mom, I told her I was going with my friends. I know you didn't have plans. And you said you were in the car today, so that would be a good thing to do before we go. Mom, no, you're so mean. Don't feel bad. Right? Just compassion. So the child goes out and plays with the hose. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Okay, I'm done, Mom. I'm done. Okay, so what do we do? Any suggestions? Oh, that was quite enough. I don't think I pay anything for this. I think car wash. I'm glad that I'm playing the hose. You really had a good time. You're squirt me too. I'm not, right? We're not mad. Looks like you got a little more work to do. No problem. But Mom, the game is starting. The dad's coming to pick me up. We gotta take the game off. I hate it when I miss things because I don't get it. Oh, my God.
Well, and then the next time when you're asked them to wash the car or to leave or to do whatever, you know, my problem with this scenario is that they would just continue to play, like yesterday, I was trying to get my son to weed, to help me weed. So I spent 3 hours weeding, and he's played in the dirt and dug holes and did a bunch of other fun stuff. And I'm like, look, you haven't done $2 worth of work. So leave this patch, and when you're done with that, that's it. And so he'll pick a couple, and then he'll go off, and it's like,
Okay,
not enough.
okay, and this is why community is so good and why God chose you to be the parent of this child. Because we have to figure out what will motivate our child, what are the consequences? And we think as parents that lecturing is not a consequence to get our kids to do what they're supposed to do. And sometimes we have to be creative and come up with other consequences. And we are running short on time. The last thing I want to leave you with is an assignment. And all of these logical consequences can feel overwhelming. So I'm going to just give you one thing to do. And that is to meet every single challenge with love and empathy. What is your empathetic phrase that you use when you really feel sad? Oh, this is so sad. So if your child breaks the lamp, the only thing I'm telling you to do is go, oh no, this is so sad. Now, if you lose it and start yelling, at least you've done the first part of the child, right? Okay. The child knows you're living, all right? And then you can work on the consequences. You always have a chance to go back and say, you know, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have grounded you for life. Didn't need that. Let me have a redo it. I also shouldn't have called you those names. I apologize. I was emotional. Let me tell you what I wish I'd said. And won't it be wonderful when kids come back to us and say that someday? Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. Oh, Dad, I shouldn't have said those things. And I haven't used it. And their spouse is going to thank you someday when they say that to their spouse, right? Okay, so letting the consequences to the teaching. This is one of my favorite things. Parenting with love and logic gives great examples, and the bookstore just ordered them and unlocks them this morning. So they're ready to go. And there's a handout for you. Okay, there's a handout that's got my name and phone number on it. Feel free to call me, text me, email me. I love talking about this. Get to know the parent sitting next to you, have someone call, say, I don't know what to do, my child won't leave the garden, right? And maybe we can brainstorm some. So, thank you very much. I'm going to stick around here. I know some of you have to get kids. If you want to leave, you can. I'm going to answer the question.
Thank you so much. Things would not be well worth it. Good news is we only have to left for the next 4 months. We don't even have to start lifting, right? Christine will be back with us in January at some point for the lift session. Our next session of this is October the 9th. And I assume we'll be in here October the 9th. And I'll put something out publicly about what we're going to be wrestling, what we're dealing with. And I will consult you for research leading up to it. Christine, thank you so much. We've got Christine's here hanging about. Some of us may have to run, but she's happy to talk to you one-on-one, I think, for a little bit. Yeah. Thank you.